Hi guys, hope everyone's well and welcome back to the Improvement Podcast. So in this episode, I'm going to touch on my favourite exercises for each body part. Before doing so, a quick update on myself. So this is the first podcast I've recorded since I've been back from my holiday, which I believe has been, when this comes out, 2 weeks ago, which I really enjoyed. I was in Corfu in Greece, which was really nice. It was good to get some time away, downtime, and just experience a different culture, bit of different food, etc. So yeah, it was enjoyable. Uh, the only downside was potentially that there wasn't a lot to do there. It was quite secluded where our hotel or a resort was, which is good and bad. It's good because it's kind of relaxing. You've got your own wee space, but not if you want to do much. So it was a wee bit of a distance to get into like the town centre or to do much, but I really enjoyed it. And I think my favourite part was going through to like the old town, which was like a really cool experience. And just experiencing, like I said, the culture there, which I didn't think would be my favourite part. So yeah, like I said, this episode going to touch on basically my favourite exercises for each body part, and we're going to start off with touching on chest or your pecs or your pectoralis if you want to use a fancy word. So basically, when we think about what a good chest movement is it will take, basically for any muscle group, we want to take it for a large range of motion. We want the majority of the load on that target muscle because you can take, let's say, a muscle for a large range of motion, but that doesn't mean there's a lot of tension on the muscle during it, if that makes sense. So we want to put a lot of load or tension on that muscle while taking it through a large range of motion and make it the prime mover, which is what we're after. And what I'd say is my favourite movement for chest is a good converging chest press. So, what I mean by converging is when a machine converges, the handles come together. In this case, as you press, the handles will come closer together at the top. And what that basically allows you to do is take your chest through a large range of motion. Because if we think about like a barbell or a Smith machine, when we press, our hands are fixed in place. They can't move. They can't come together, which is in some sense bad. It's good because we're in a stable environment, but it's somewhat poor because when we're doing a standard barbell or Smith machine, we can't fully shorten our chest. So when we finish training our chest, when our chest is fully shortened or contracted, it's when our upper arms in line with our body. Or sorry, it's been driven into your chest, if that makes sense. Think about like a top position on a fly. That's a fully shortened chest. So when we do, let's say, a fixed bar movement, we don't have the ability to fully shorten our chest. And as a result, it's not on paper the best movement to train our chest, because it doesn't train it through a large range of motion and the tension drops off at the top. Whereas if you have a good converging chest press, the tension stays on that muscle from start to finish. You get a good contraction at the top, and there's no point where you're kind of, there's no easy part of the movement, which is good. If you don't have access to like a good converging chest press or that movement's stalled, meaning stop progressing, you could maybe consider like a dumbbell press or maybe even a cable press. And the benefit of like a dumbbell press or cable press is again, it converges, which means your upper arm can come like across your body to an extent. And the difference between like a dumbbell and a cable press is when you're doing a dumbbell press, the tension drops off at the top, whereas it doesn't with a cable press, which could make it a better option. But then again, with a cable press, it's a bit awkward to get your to get into position. Same with dumbbells, to be honest. And the drawback of both a dumbbell and a cable press is you don't have as much stability as, let's say, a machine. So as you see, there's no, except for maybe you could say the converging chest press kind of like trumps them all. But apart from that, there's pros and cons to exercises. There's like a dumbbell may be good for some reason, like you've got freedom to basically place the dumbbell in this sense where you want. But there's downsides like a lack of stability, meaning it's harder to balance the dumbbell, which can get in the way of you just getting a lot out of that target muscle. But yeah, if I had to pick one, it'd be a good converging chest press because you are nice and stable, because you can take the chest through a large range of motion without any tension dropping off throughout the set. And this doesn't mean if you do like a barbell bench press or a Smith machine press, you aren't going to target your chest. But on paper, if I had to say, a good converging chest press is probably one of the best movements to train your chest. And as well as that, what I'd look to do is put a like incline press in as well. Reason being is when we're doing, let's say, a chest press, depending on where the handles travel as you press, you'll usually just train like your mid chest and lower chest slightly more, depending on the machine. So what I'd look to do is pair that with like an incline press. Again, an incline press machine or an incline dumbbell press is a good choice for the same reasons I've just spoke about. But there's also options like an incline Smith press, which is a solid option as well, which feels really good for myself. And if, let's say, you don't have access to like a Smith machine, again, you can just do a barbell press or like a dumbbell press. Both are still good options, but if I had to choose one, it would be a good converging chest press and an incline press machine for those reasons. Because like that allows you to just get the most out of that muscle with like a stable environment, a safe environment as well. And saying that, although I've said these are kind of like my favorite movements, I do think there's value in just learning how to do like movements that doesn't require stability, or what that does require stability, meaning like barbell movements, dumbbell movements. It's good to have them in so you can basically still work on your stability and being able to stabilize other movements, being able to balance other movements. I do think that's still valuable. But this is if, let's say, we're thinking just purely muscle growth, this is what I'd choose. But of course, no program's like that. No program only allows you to have 2 exercises for a certain muscle group anyway. So that's the benefit of that, really. Like you've got option to choose more. And in terms of the next muscle group I'll go over, it's shoulders. So when we are training the shoulders, again, the role of our shoulder, it depends which. We've got multiple delts, we've got multiple parts of our shoulder. So it depends which one we're talking about. For the ease of this video, we're going to call them the front delt, the side delt, and the rear delt. And when it comes to what movements I choose, first of all, it's a lateral raise variation. A lateral raise variation, I think, is absolutely key because when we're doing any pressing movements, we don't work our side delt to a large extent. Whereas when we're doing a lateral raise variation, we will. And what a lateral raise is basically when you take your, in case you don't know, your upper arm from like down at your side and then basically extend it and drive your hand out. And you want to focus on driving your hand out and not up, because if you drive it up, you'll get a bit more trap involvement. But yeah, I like a lateral raise variation. Your side delts can never be too big and they don't get a lot of attention from doing standard pressing movements. And next up, I like a high incline or a shoulder press. The reason I say high incline is you get a lot more bang for your buck with it. It's potentially a more comfortable angle to press from for some people. So I like a high incline Smith press or a dumbbell press. And the reason being is when you are pressing from that more comfortable angle, because you're not forced to press directly overhead as much, you can potentially like avoid some issues, and as well as that, you'll also tie in upper chest during the process. Even if you get like on well with a shoulder press, with a high incline press, you can tie in your upper pec while you're doing so. And the benefit of that is basically just getting more bang for your buck. You're getting more done in that period, and I don't think you should be worried about, right, I've not, let's say, done a compound that completely trains my shoulders, because I don't think if you're doing a high incline, I don't think it's going to like take away from your shoulder development a ton, because we will use our shoulders when we're doing any chest press, any dip, any movement like that. So yeah, I like a lateral raise variation and a high incline shoulder or Smith machine press for that reason. If you don't have a high incline, or if you don't have, sorry, a Smith, I hope everyone has access to a bench anyway. Again, shoulder press, but if not, a shoulder press uh, machine works fine. So in terms of next movement, it's going to be training your lats. So I'm gonna separate your back into your lats and upper back, just because it doesn't make sense just to group them into one. It's like grouping your chest, shoulders into one as well. Like, why would you? They are separate muscles in that region. So first of all, when targeting your lats are the muscle that basically joins onto your upper arm and then your lower back, and that's where they originate and they insert. And in terms of the role of the lat is basically to drive your upper arm in line with your torso. in like a shoulder width position or round about that. And basically, we want a row or pull down variation where you're driving your elbow to hip, ideally both. So we're training the lat in its overhead, or so we're training overhead and also horizontally, because we've got different fibers in our lat. We've got horizontal and vertical fibers. So if we do both motions, we're going to train them and train both sets of fibers, if that makes sense. And what I like is a row to fully shorten that I can't get more words out, to fully shorten the lat. So we get a good contraction and also a pull down. So we train it in its lengthened position. So we're training it in both positions, which makes sense. It's like if you want to fully develop a muscle, why not train it for a full range of motion? It means you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. And my favorite movement would be like at my gym, I've got a good pull down machine, which I get on really, really well with. And basically, what you want to ensure is, again, you're driving your elbow to your hip. You are keeping your shoulder away from your ear when you're doing so. And I like to do a single arm. Basically, it allows you to line yourself up to target that muscle slightly better than if you're doing it with both arms at the same time. So yeah, I like a good pull down machine and also a good plate loaded row. The plate loaded row I'm using the now at my gym. Like I do it actually standing, stepped back from it, and what it basically allows me to do is match it to my lats capabilities. So I stand and I basically line myself up so when I pull it, it's right in line with my torso, and I drive my elbow to my hip. And then I basically plant my non-working hand on the chest pad, and that feels really, really good for my lats. But a good movement, if you've not got much kit in your gym, is just using cables. So with cables, the benefit of them is you can drive the handle exactly where you want to. You're not limited, or you're not fixed into a machine that's poorly built that's not going to allow you to bias or train a muscle group effectively. And again, doing a cable movement single arms, perfect. So when like a common one's just like a single arm pull down and a single arm row. You can also do it on a pull down station, but what you find with a pull down station is if you sit on a pull down station normally, what happens is when you pull the implement down, when you pull the handle down, just because you're sitting and your head's in the middle of it and the cable's straight above your head, you end up pulling and driving your elbow out instead of straight down, which is the benefit of maybe using just a cable station instead of a lat pull down station. So yeah, a good pull down and row make up like the bulk for it. Yes, a pullover can be beneficial, but if you're doing a pull down and row, you're training those muscles in both positions anyway, and also you can load your lat more with a good pull down and row, whereas load is kind of limited by like just maintaining that position with your arm straight with your tricep, and you can't really put as much mechanical tension or load on that target muscle. And next up is the upper back. So when you're training the upper back, I believe a chest supported row is very valuable. And the reason being is with a chest supported row, it allows us to basically practice having protraction, retraction of our shoulder blades. Basically, we can move our shoulders and our shoulder blades backwards and forwards because we've got that chest support, so it makes it really easy to do so. And focusing on breathing in when you're in that stretch position and driving elbows back when you are rowing it. And I like a neutral or overhand grip where your elbows are flared, because when our elbows are tucked excessively, we target our lats more. When we've got a bit more of like a flared upper arm, we will target our upper back more effectively. And when I'm doing an upper back row, I like to own both ends of the rep. So I'm not like bouncing out of the bottom or the top of the movement. I'm making sure my muscles in full control at all times, and I'm definitely getting the most out of the rep. So yeah, a good chest supported row is a key, in my opinion, for building like a good back. And as well as that, that's kind of like the only movement I really need in regards to like an upper back. That's the only movement I'm doing. Obviously, you've got like a bent over row and deadlift, but I'm just about to go on to my favorite movements to target erectors, which they are kind of in. But yeah, if you have a good chest supported row, that can be great. You can also do like a upper back pull down. But I don't think a lot of beginners will need that to grow their upper back. I think they can get away with just doing like a chest supported row and then a bent over row variation or a remaining deadlift variation. Bent over row or a deadlift variation. Because if you're doing three upper back movements in the same session, I'd question that, because you'll probably find that you don't need that much work. Maybe if you're doing like a bent over row, or you've got a session where for some reason you're not bent over rowing or deadlifting, then you can maybe do an upper back pull down, where again you focus on keeping your chest lifted, slightly lean back, and you get plenty of movement at the shoulder blades, and you drive your elbows down. The opposite of what we want to do during a lat pull down. Although when most people do a lat pull down anyway, it targets their upper back, so it shouldn't really be named lat pull down. So next up, you've got your erectors, which is basically the muscle that runs down either side of your spine. And when we are training the erectors, their role is to basically take your back from flexion to extension. So think about someone's back rounded during a deadlift, taking them from that position to an arched back is basically their role, to extend the spine. And what I like to do to train the erectors is a bent over row variation and a deadlift variation. I think that's absolutely plenty, and it's movements that will give you the most bang for your buck and will also stimulate your upper back. And yes, most of the time when we want to train our back, we want to take it through as large a range of motion as or any muscle, we want to take it through a large range of motion. And that's just because we usually build muscle best when we're in the middle and stretch position of a lift, and it just kind of makes sense. It's shown that training muscles through like a large range of motion is better than just isometrically contraction it, meaning holding a muscle in a certain position. However, I do think doing a bent over row and a deadlift variation is plenty for your erectors. Like, I don't think you need to isolate them, really. If you find you do a bent over row and a deadlift variation, you get stronger at them, you do that for years, and you've still got really weak erectors, then fine, isolate them through doing like a hyperextension. But if you don't already, or if you haven't done that for years, try that, see how you get on, and again, progress your lifts over time with a lot of effort, with good form, and you should be fine. So next up, biceps. So when it comes to training your biceps, my favorite movement is like a preacher curl, because you're really locked in, you're really stable, and you can just focus on getting the most out of your bicep. And most preacher curl, if it's a machine or with a dumbbell, I prefer a machine if it's a good one. But if you use a machine or a dumbbell, most of the time the tension stays on your bicep at most points of the movement, and it is difficult throughout the full range, which is ideal. Usually when a movement is, let's say, really easy at one point and lift really hard at another, it's not that ideal. We want to challenge our muscle maximally through a full range of motion. So it's good when the tension doesn't drop off. So yeah, I like a preacher curl and also a behind the body cable curl. The reason being is when we think about training our bicep, if we do a preacher curl, that's it, and it's more of a shortened position, meaning fully contracted. It's not getting stretched as much. And then when we're doing a behind body cable curl, what that basically is when you are standing like away from a cable stack, you are, or you could do it with a dumbbell, but my favorite is like a behind body cable curl. And that's basically when you stand facing away from the cable stack, holding the D handles, the cable pulleys are set low, and you basically perform a bicep curl there, keeping your upper arm pinned back and behind your body, not allowing it to move excessively. So yeah, that will train your bicep in the stretch position. So you'll see those two movements will train our bicep in each end of its range of motion, if that makes sense, because usually it's quite hard to do with one unless you have like excessive movement of the upper arm, which will take away from your ability to train the biceps. So instead, it's more efficient doing that in two. So yeah, they're my favorite two for biceps. You've also got your brachialis and your brachioradialis, which is basically like another part of your bicep. So you've got obviously the main part, and then you've got your brachialis and brachioradialis. Your brachialis is under your bicep, and you've got the brachioradialis, which is your forearm. And to target them well, I like to use a hammer curl. So you can use like a rope hammer curl or dumbbell hammer curl. Personally, I like doing a single arm dumbbell hammer curl. That's my favorite, and it's consistently hard throughout the full range and a bit heavier in that stretch position. And I think you can get a bit more range of motion. However, both can be like a good option. So yeah. And when we're thinking about a hammer curl, again, with all bicep movements, we want to keep our upper arm nice and still, focus on driving your forearm into your bicep. But with a hammer curl, you basically keep a neutral grip, meaning you keep your palm facing in. You don't want to supinate, which means face your palm up. You want to keep it in at all times. And next up, last but not least, is triceps. So when I'm training the triceps, what I like is a good dip machine or a bodyweight dip. If not, people don't always get along well with doing, let's say, a bodyweight dip. If you don't, then a dip machine could be a good option. I personally get some shoulder issues when I'm doing a bodyweight dip. If you don't have a dip machine available and you don't get on with bodyweight dips, you could do, let's say, a close grip Smith machine press. But I like a dip variation. I think that's, or for me, I connect really well with it, meaning I can feel it a lot in my triceps. And I think my triceps, especially this gaining phase, as I've been running a dip machine, has benefited a ton from it. So the reason why I like a dip machine for triceps is it allows you to maximally load them. So just like how with, let's say we're trying to target our quads or our chest, we're not just going to do flies. We're going to do something that allows us to get a substantial amount of load on that muscle. And in the triceps case, it is a good dip, in my opinion. So I like a good dip machine. Focus on having a relatively narrow grip. Focus on driving elbows down and in as you press and staying relatively upright. So we make it a tricep focused movement. As if you're a bit more bent over, you'll use a bit more chest and shoulders. So next up, I also like a tricep extension, as this will emphasize training the triceps in a shortened range. So what this could be is just like a crossbody cable extension. Which is basically when you hold a cable in opposing hands and stand face onto the cable stack and extend them, or it could be a long rope tricep extension. And the benefit of those two is basically alignment. If we're using like a really short rope or an easy bar with a close grip or something like that, usually we've not got great alignment, which means force is going through the elbow in a way it doesn't move, which isn't going to be great for our elbow long term. And usually you don't get as good a contraction, you don't connect as well with the movement. And when we're thinking about doing a tricep extension, we just want to think about keeping our upper arm relatively still. Again, it's an isolation movement, so our actions should reflect that, meaning we shouldn't just be chucking away weight about. We should be keeping our upper arm still, contracting hard, spending time in both the top and the bottom of the rep, in my opinion. Feels best for myself and allows you to get the most out of the movement. So yeah, a long rope extension is a common one that most people will have. And again, the reason for the long rope is better alignment. You can get a better contraction and usually get your tricep a bit shorter in length, whereas you're kind of limited if you've got a short rope. And lastly is, I know I said I'll do two for each movement, but the biceps and triceps, obviously, they're not just one muscle. There's multiple muscles in your biceps and triceps. So I think that's excused. And in terms of like why I like a good overhead extension, when we're doing an overhead extension, it allows you to fully lengthen the triceps. And some research suggests we build muscle best in the middle and lengthen range. And more research is actually coming out to say that like lengthen range partials could actually provide just as much muscle growth or maybe even more than training your muscle for a full range of motion. So as a result, I think it's definitely good to make sure you're spending time getting a good stretch in your exercises, spending time in stretch positions when you're doing movements. So basically what we want to do is do like a overhead tricep extension. I like it single arm. Again, better alignment usually feels a bit better. And I like doing that with just like a either D handle or a rope on a cable pulley. And you want to basically get as overhead as you can without discomfort. What I mean by that is if you can do it with your arm completely overhead, it feels great, then perfect. If not, then you can try putting the cable higher so you're more, instead of going or driving the cable straight up, you're doing so more so forward, if that makes sense. And if that's still sore, you can maybe try doing it with like a rope and doing it dual arm. That usually feels better for myself if I ever get issues with it and some clients. And if that's sore as well, what you can basically do is move the cable so it is basically just above your shoulder height and basically stand facing away from the cable and just extend it without an attachment. And there you're still going to lengthen your tricep. You're just not getting maybe as great a stretch, but we don't want to be taking our muscles through movements that cause pain. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the episode and took a lot from it. Obviously, with it, it is slightly hard to kind of tell you exactly how to perform each movement, what each movement is in a podcast format, but I hope I managed to put the information across and hopefully easy to understand the concept, if that makes sense. So thank you very much for listening and hope everyone has a great day.